what I want to talk about today, it relates to Shaw. You know Shaw at this point, sobriety, humanity, and artistry. But today I really want to focus on the H part of Shaw, which is humanity, right? Um, Humanity obviously is important. The reason why it's important is because this day and age, um, we come across issues with meeting people all the time, but not in the same way we used to. Recently, they've been saying like this generation of people has been dealing with loneliness in a very different way from other generations before us. Because back then, loneliness was probably caused by, literally people are too far away to meet somebody, right? Or like the city just was very isolated, or, literally like, you can't meet people. All of that still happens. I feel like with the transportation being more accessible in many ways, even though cars are super expensive, it's actually easier to meet people than ever before. However, we're really lonely. And that's because, or one theory as to why we're super lonely is because we try to find artificial um, alternatives to meeting people, which is on the phone. And as we come to realize, it's like you still want to meet people, but we just don't really have the same. We don't understand the convenience of going on the phone as that is a hindrance to meeting people in real life. Because you could just be like, oh, I could just see them on the phone, but the phone can only do so much. But that's actually not what I want to talk to you about. I actually had notes today. So meeting people is very, very important. And the reason why meeting people is so important, at least the points that I'm going to make today, because there's too many points. One, you just get different perspectives in life. So I'll use my life for an example. Um, in my life, I've been blessed to have many opportunities to meet different people all the time from very ranging backgrounds. I remember when I was in school, I was not, I'll just say how it is. There wasn't many black kids in my class. I was one of like three. Later on, as more people moved into the city, it started becoming a lot more mixed racially, ethnically. But I grew up with a lot of white kids in my class, a few Hispanics here and there. So that automatically was different from my household. In my household, everyone looks like me because we're literally the same people. We came from the same person. So going to school, I was like, all right, so I automatically see a different perspective on life because these are people that have a very different upbringing than me in many ways. We had a lot of similarities. Don't get me wrong. We watched the same TV. Obviously, like the jokes on TV were the same. Music we liked, but culturally, it was very different. Don't get me started with the food. Another thing that makes meeting people so important is that you're it's always a learning experience. And I say to me, this is probably the most important thing about meeting new people. So, like I said, I'll use my life for an example. Um, when I went to college, that was a time when I truly got to experience like meeting different people from different places. Now, we all had a commonality in college, being that we're all trying to find like advanced degrees. We're trying to find work from our degrees, or at least you're supposed to, and we were trying to just advance our lives. So it became very easy in college to just bump into somebody like, hey, what you majoring in? You find that common interest, and even if you're not like in that major, just them talking about it and their passion towards like advancing their lives was something you guys could like relate to. Um, Meeting people in college was uncomfortable at times, a lot more comfortable than the real world because college is an environment in which many people go to find this advancement in their life. Now, outside of college, it's much harder to find many different people, right? We can go into how communities and cities still are affected from like redlining and gentrification, where people kind of inadvertently find themselves around the same type of people because it's either what you can afford or many different factors. But like I said, what I did in my life, I just always put myself in different situations. So when I was in college, I actually went to Africa. I went all the way to Kenya for choice. Like I wanted to go to Kenya. And you think like, oh, I look like this. We have so much in common. Obviously not. Kenya is very, very different from anything I've ever experienced in my life, right? Like the air is different, the sky looks a little different. The sun's still the same. That's just about the same thing. Trees are different. There was no grass. There was no grass. It didn't rain. I'm from Florida. It's very green and it rains hard and it rains a lot. None of those two things happen. Also, with the most, I was really flabbergasted from this. It was cold in Kenya. It wasn't like 30 degrees Fahrenheit, but like 50, 60 degrees. And it was June or July. Because where I was situated in Kenya, where I was in Nairobi, the equator was above us. So it was actually wintertime when I was there. And it was noticeably like cool weather. Now, when I got above the equator where it was summer, it was really hot. But I wasn't there a lot of time. So outside of just the climate of it being different, the people, Kenya has its own history, its own anthropology that is different from the Americas. And so because of that, I just had to learn. I learned so many different things about the people and the tribes. You know, a lot of people when they think of Kenya, they just think of one homogenous group of people. When there's more than 40 tribes, and they recognize each other as ethnically different because they are ethnically different. They have their own languages, and they are just very different. So you can learn a lot about different types of people in a country that's much smaller than the United States. We're talking about, I think Kenya has like 40 million people, maybe 50 million. I don't know. So you're always meeting different people, having learning experiences with these different peoples. And there's other places I went where I met different people, but those to college and going to Kenya was like the biggest wow. People are different. The third thing about meeting people is that it makes you get used to discomfort. A lot of times when you're talking to your friends, you know, just talk about some nonsense, or like if you have an issue, you know, this person makes me feel good. Or, you know, very few times you will have it where like you and your friends argue, but you know, like if you guys built the cachet throughout the years, you guys can get over it or whatever. Like having friends that you're familiar with and around people that you know is very comfortable, right? However, when you're meeting different people, it can get very uncomfortable because especially if someone that you don't know their ticks, you don't know what sets them off, you don't know what they think is funny, you don't know if you're having a good time. Some people, based on the experiences you had in your life, they make it kind of easy for you to know like if they're having a good time, they might be more verbal. It's just very different, especially if you go across cultures. Having a good time may look different. I remember one time I was in the parking lot at like Publix or something, and I see two guys talking very passionately, and their arms are moving everywhere. I'm like, this is definitely something about to go down. I'm about to see it firsthand. Man, they dap each other up, and they just said like, "See you later." I was like, "Oh, it was these two, what I'd presume Haitian or not Haitian, it's Jamaican guys, like talking, and they're talking loud." And the thing is, I didn't know what they were saying, so I just assumed like, oh, they must be mad at each other. But no, it was just talking loud in a language or in a dialect rather, because I speak English, they speak English that I was not familiar with, right? Um, I always say like, you know, sometimes you'd see a conversation, you don't know how it's going, right? Or you don't know how people feel about it. And when you're having a conversation with somebody else, you don't know if like maybe they're joking with you sometimes. You don't know if they're serious, but that's something that you get better at the more you talk to different people. So when you are met with situations um, that may be uncomfortable, you've built that basically endurance and stamina, the strength to be like, all right, I've been through this already. I know what to do. I know what to say. All right. Now, this is the part of the video where I felt like it was necessary to talk about, but I want to talk about it. So, meeting different people is very important because it makes you aware of other people's emotions and temperaments. All right. Now, all those macho guys in the comments or that's watching this video or hear about this, like, oh, you know, that's the problem. You guys are weak. And I'm like, whatever is weakness, I guess that's what I am, right? I don't think so, but it's very important to bring up because when you don't meet different people and you're just stuck with the same type of people, you inadvertently become unaware of what makes people tick, what sets them off, what makes them happy. And that's very important. Now, I'm not advocating to be a people pleaser. That's not something I'm trying to say. I just think it's very important to be very aware of people's emotions because emotions are important. It is the guidance to what to do next. Not the end all be all, but it's something that helps you move forward in life. Or it's something that helps you recognize, like, okay, something's bothering me. What do I need to do next so I don't feel this way anymore? Right? Emotions are very important. When you're around the same people, you won't get a full grasp on, okay, this is something that a lot of people feel. This is something that only this person feels. This is something that I do that people don't understand. This is something that people know me of, right? There's so many things to, um, really analyze when you are meeting different people. So I'll give you something once again personal. Uh, I was I was minding my own business. And I was working with these kids, right? And these kids, they were saying like offensive things, right? I'm not gonna, YouTube is kind of scary these days. You can't say exactly what you want to say, so I'm gonna just work around my words. They were saying offensive stuff, right? And I really made it a point to be like, hey, listen, those offensive words obviously are offensive, right? Especially to who that word pertains to, right? And the kids understood, right? But they still said it and they kept saying it. And I'm not a person to like cry in a corner or whatever, but like it really bothered me. So I made it a thing to like really tell these kids, like, hey, that word is not a good word for many different reasons, right? And certain people would probably think that because you're using that word, that you would be they would assume you to be something that maybe you're not, right? And they understood, but here's the problem in the situation. Those kids have been saying that word and many different other words, but particularly that word for a long time, right? And they've been saying it around their friends. And, you know, I am a person that they see all the time. So even me saying something about it, they don't take it for face value because I'm not different people. I'm the same people. That's just him. He feels that way. Everyone else does not feel that way. But here's the problem with that idea or that theology. Everyone that you know is not everyone to know. Once you leave your bubble, you realize, oh, these people are different. And things that I say or do are different, right? It just doesn't mean the same thing, or people don't accept it as the same thing. And maybe you see on social media people saying things like that. But once again, like social media is algorithmically catered to people. It's not like, oh, everybody thinks this is funny. Even if it has a million likes, a million is not 340 million people in the United States. It's a very small number. 10 million is not really a lot of people. Yeah, it's a lot of people, but in the grand scheme of things, it really isn't. So I think a lot of times people feel like, okay, I've seen this on social media, all my friends do it, therefore it's okay. And that's not a reality because everyone on social media, A, you don't know them. Two, just because a lot of people like it on social media, it doesn't really mean that everybody thinks that way or everyone does those things or everyone accepts it like that. Because I really don't. Like, for instance, um, I do like TikTok is not a social media that I enjoy being on, right? Um, I'd be on Instagram and other things, right? But like TikTok is very hard for me to like, oh, let me just scroll on TikTok. I was talking to somebody and they said like, yo, I was scrolling so long on TikTok and the thing said like, "Hey, you've been scrolling for a while." I'm like, "What?" That is, and it hasn't happened to you. I'm like, that has never happened to me ever. I never been on that for that long for someone to be like, "Hey, you've been on this for quite a long time. I think it's time to get off." And I say that because like people would assume because I'm a young guy that I must be on TikTok and therefore I'll be scrolling on it for hours. For hours. That's insane. The videos are no longer than 60 seconds, 30 seconds. Most of them are like 10 seconds. And you amassed more than an hour's worth of short videos. That is hundreds of videos. That's insane. I mean, no judgment. I just think that's crazy because like that's something that's very foreign to me, right? Um, so when it comes to speaking, certain things that I think are funny, I think is funny because the people around me think is funny, right? Um, I wish I could give this example, but it's gonna sound like a bad word anyway, so I'm not gonna use it. But me and my brother, make uh we use alternative words for bad words. The thing is, it sounds really close to the actual bad word. We think it's funny. Other people may not think that's funny. There's like, no, it sounds too close to the real word for you to be saying it with other people. Like, it's an inside joke. Some people get it, but not everybody, right? Especially when you meet different people, right? Um, and that's the thing, man. Like when you're a kid, you're in a very insular, you're in a bubble, naturally, because you live with your parents. You don't have a car, or you shouldn't have a car. That's illegal. So you're only gonna be aware of what your parents basically let you see, unless you're just out in the streets doing whatever. And even then, you're only in the same area. You're gonna meet the same people. It's not like infinite amount of people. But once you go out in the world and start exploring, start seeing things, you meet different people. And when you meet different people, that's when you get, learn different perspectives. Everything's a learning experience. You get comfortable in uncomfortable environments. That's what the pluses get. But when you don't meet different people, you might say things that are truly offensive. Like seriously, this is a bad thing, and people can tell you those things are offensive, but because you haven't met different people enough, you don't see it as like, oh, I should take your advice. They take it as like, oh, you're just one strange person in this community that doesn't think the same thing. It's a lot of groupthink, right? And groupthink has helped humanity for many years, but in this way, something that's damaging, it could, to me, be the demise of certain aspects of society. Another thing, over the week, I've had different conversations, and certain people, because you don't meet different people, may think away, and then you may challenge their thought because you don't grow up the same way they grow up. So you're like, why do you think that way? And they give you the reason, and you probably combat it with your own logic, and it's a back and forth, which is normal. Arguments are okay, just as long as you guys respect each other's, you know, person. But it just wasn't like registering with them, or it's just like, oh, I never thought of it like that. And that's what's important about meeting different people. So the last thing I gotta say is just like, we need to be able to have difficult discussions with other people. It's just necessary because of reasons I said before. When you meet different people, that those things kind of naturally happen. But because we don't actually meet different people, we got to make it a point to like talk, have discussions, do things that helps us learn about other people. Because honestly, this is kind of off script. I've been going off script for a while. We want validation from other people. That's why we go on social media. That's why we wear clothes that are way too expensive. That's why we live in cities that we probably can't afford and do things that are outside of what I guess we should be doing. But at the end of the day, if nobody likes us for what we do, we feel some type of way. I think we can be honest. So we know we want these things from people, but yet we don't meet them, right? And we could chalk it up to like how zoning is a thing, but most people live in cities, especially in the United States. I think it's like more than 50% of people live in cities, and that number is only going to grow because jobs are in cities. So it's not like most people are not being able to meet people. We're just not doing it. Maybe this world is not safe. There's so many theories as to why that is, and I'm not saying those things aren't valid, but we should yearn for a society in which we meet people, get to learn, you know, and still be safe. Maybe I'm just being, having fictional thoughts, but that's what I really want. And those things that those kids were saying, I was more upset that they didn't see how I thought of the situation, because maybe they don't respect me and like how I think. They probably don't see it my way, but I just feel like they haven't met enough people in which that's a reality of saying like harmful things. So hopefully that changes. I still respect those kids in many ways. But yeah, that's all I gotta say for this video, man. I missed you guys. Hopefully I'll be able to make more videos. No, I will make more videos. I'm proclaiming it. And yeah, stay tuned, y'all. Get in your bag.